This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham and Jeff Fife is here in the studio. And Jeff, we're here in the podcast studio. We've got the windows open. It's like spring out there, man.
Yeah, we're recording on a Thursday afternoon. I'm not in a suit, which is a beautiful thing. And you got the windows open. It's like 65, 67 degrees out. We got sunshine, and we have a number one ranking. It's still not used to it. I know you and Scott covered this at the turn after the loss to the Hokies, but yet still getting the number one ranking. I find it borderline comical. I got deluged by Hokies today in my local Rotary clubs because I occasionally talk trash with Happy Dollars at my Rotary club. If there's any Rotarians out there listening, you get to stand up, and usually you're celebrating something, and I'm usually trashing the Hokies. So I got it back in full force. But I love how they say they beat the number one team in the country. No, you didn't. We were number two when you beat us. We became number one afterwards.
Yes. Ultimate revenge there, right? Yeah.
You didn't get to beat the number one team in the country. But yet, now we've had our first defense of that number one with Miami, which you and Scott covered sort of the wrap-up on that. And now we have this, then an 8-day break. Now we're at the 6-day mark. What do you do with your time? You got a week of freedom. You got an open weekend. We've got sunny skies. What do you do with your week, Chris?
I've already gone out for 2 runs on the Greenway. Where we're based in Waynesboro, we're very fortunate. I live just a couple blocks away from the YMCA that you know and love, and right behind the YMCA is this just awesome 1 mile plus greenway stretch that you see mountains and rivers and green grass, and in this wintertime and there's all that going on. I got to watch a game last night, Virginia Tech and Duke. Didn't care who won, didn't care who lost, because Virginia doesn't play for a week.
I was just rooting for injuries.
For injuries. I actually posted a Twitter. I was, because of your experience, I guess, with your Rotary folks today, I rooted for Duke, and then I put on Twitter that
too.
I felt icky.
Yeah.
I needed a shower afterwards. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing that. But
well, in Duke, the first half, I thought to myself, this has got to be the worst defensive team I have ever seen. And Virginia Tech was getting, when we were playing Duke in their zone, we were getting there at the free throw line a little bit back, maybe on the ACC on the logo. But, Henry was getting in the middle. They were 8-9 feet from the basket. They were bricking layups. They were not taking aggressive small elbow jumpers. It was crazy how bad Duke's defense was. And then just Virginia Tech couldn't make any momentum, and then Duke's three-point shooting just went through the roof. That Duke team, the second half Duke, is dangerous. The first half Duke that we saw against Virginia Tech, we could crush. We would empty our bench against them, but they play that type of defense against us. I don't know. It was kind of icky.
it was, well, just the fact that you're rooting for Mike Krzyzewski to outcoach Buzz Williams. The whole saying that sentence is hard. But give Duke credit. They've won 2 games on the road at Georgia Tech. I know a third division ACC team. There's 15 teams in the conference, so that's, there's the first division, second division, third division. But you still win on the road at Georgia Tech, and then you beat a Virginia Tech team at home that had just beaten Virginia in Charlottesville, and you do so. You win both those games without Marvin Bagley III. People like me and others have talked about Wendell Carter. Marvin Bagley is the third. Wendell Carter is a junior, I think. Having to keep all these surnames and all those titles and together make sense. But a lot of us had said that Carter, if not for Bagley, Carter would have been a star player, and we would have all been talking how great he is. We've seen that the last couple of games. So it's not to say that Duke's a better team without Bagley. Bagley's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, and he'll make whoever drafts him a great team for the next 12 to 15 years afterwards. But I've been impressed with what they've been able to do in his absence.
Well, in Carolina now on a bit of a run. We had almost left them for dead several weeks ago, and now they've won 3 or 4 straight, including that game at home against Duke. All of a sudden, Carolina looks formidable again, and good for them. The ACC is more fun when the Blue Bloods are playing a little bit better. It's also enjoyable when they're crushed and demoralized. But if Virginia gets to do the crushing and demoralizing, and we have beaten Duke and Carolina this year, obviously, Do you expect to see Carolina strong push at the end and position themselves for the ACC tournament as a team to watch?
They could. I mean, the caution I would throw is that they did beat Duke at home, and they've still got that game on the road. We'll see. They'll beat each other up one more time at least, right? And Carolina's got a stretch. They close out Louisville, Syracuse, Miami, Duke. In this recent stretch, they've won 4 straight, and Duke was one of those. They did beat NC State on the road, avenging a loss to NC State that was at home just a few days ago, actually, just about 2 weeks ago, I guess. But they've also beaten Pitt and Notre Dame in that stretch. So now they're playing 4 teams in these last 4 games that are NCAA tournament teams. I think Louisville and Syracuse. They have work to do, but I think they're going to be NCAA tournament teams. Miami's, I think, clearly an NCAA tournament team. Duke definitely is. So we'll see how they finish up. If they go 4-0 in that stretch, then Katie bar the door. I mean, they're going to be 13-5. They'll be a team that at that point would have won 8 straight games. They'll if they go 2-2, 3-1, I mean, it depends on who they beat and how they beat them. And that said, but I think that the issue that Carolina had, they maybe are overcoming it. It's just maybe they're developing their depth now. Luke May has to score points for them. They don't have the inside presence that they've had with most of the past great Carolina teams of recent vintage, and that's the issue. Luke May being their best scorer, and he's a big guy, he's 6'9", but he scores from the outside. So, they don't get those easy buckets they used to get. Joel Berry, the second, I'm trying to get all these numbers right. He's the other leading scorer for this team, and he's an outside scorer. Theo Pinson is a key player for this team. He scores mainly from the perimeter. So, they don't get those easy buckets that Carolina teams used to get. They don't have the depth that they've always had. So, I think that they're winning games, and give them credit, but I'm not sure that they're not the Carolina team of the last couple of years.
We've talked a little bit of Carolina, a little bit of Duke, and you've got Clemson sitting up there as third right now in the ACC. As we forecast ahead into the ACC tournament, you make the leap of assumption, which can be dangerous, that Virginia will get past their first-round opponent. Who, of the teams we've been talking about, or maybe somebody we haven't talked about, who do you want to see most at that number 4 seed position? And is it possible that we get Virginia Tech in that opening? Or would we get a winner of the 15-11 or the 14-13 type of flavor?
Oh, if Virginia's won in the quarterfinal round on Thursday, they get the 8 team. So if you're looking at the numbers right now, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, it'd be between right now. Actually, after Louisville at 8-5, they're 5th right now at 8-5, and they're technically tied with Carolina in losses at least for 4th. Then you go to Miami, Virginia Tech, NC State, Florida State 7-7, Syracuse 6-7, Boston College 6-7. There's a lot of teams there that have a lot of sorting out to do. There's 4 or 5 games left for all these schools to finish up down the stretch, and it's really hard to figure who's going to be the 8-9. We've talked about this, Jeff, but there are 2 teams out of that mix all the way down to Notre Dame's 5-8. They're on the fringe right now. They'd be the 12 right now. But between Boston College, Syracuse, Florida State, NC State, Virginia Tech, Miami, 2 of those teams are going to be playing on Tuesday. Likely 2 teams who play on Tuesday are going to be NCAA tournament teams, and that's interesting to think about. So, there's I don't know that we know who. I mean, have even a clue right now who we're going to play on Thursday, and then Friday, assume a win against that 8-9 seed, because that's the one thing about being the 1. You play an 8-9 winner. You're not playing somebody who played on Tuesday, because the 8-9 game is a Wednesday game and there's no people playing into that game. So, but assume you get all the way to Friday then, to the semifinal round. Right now, it'd be Carolina. Louisville's, I mean, what you say about this right now is except for Virginia Tech, Virginia's beating everybody. So, I don't know if I prefer anybody. Virginia played Clemson well. Virginia played Carolina well. Duke played the best against anybody outside of Virginia Tech, so maybe I prefer to see them on Saturday night.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, so I think that's where it goes. But, there's so much sorting out to do in the middle of the pack that's going to be the fun thing for the ACC and for ACC fans. No matter what your favorite school is, it's going to be seeing that movement between, say, 4 and 10 or 11.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Clemson because they're probably still going to be damaged goods, so to speak, even though they're playing very well. And that pummeling that we put on them in the last 30 minutes of that game has got to stay with you. That's got to be a bruise that just is hard to fade. I don't know. Is there anyone that you wouldn't want to see? I mean, I would not like to give Virginia Tech the opportunity to justify their existence. I mean, I would just like to see somebody else do that work, but I wouldn't mind doing it myself. I think we're much better than they are, and on a neutral court, I mean, it's odd. We pummel them in Castle Coliseum by 26 at one point, a 33-point lead. We lose to them at home, and we can't figure out how to hit free throws at the end. And I've never seen a team that takes a 17-0 run and still brings it into overtime. I don't know if Virginia Tech, who's too busy beating their chests to understand that they suck, has got a sense of how lucky they are that they got that victory against Virginia. I'm a little bitter. Is there anybody you don't want to see?
In the first game on Thursday, and Virginia plays literally the first game on Thursday because the 1 seed plays the noon game. You're playing somebody who played the day before. They had to win on Wednesday to get to Thursday. I wouldn't want to see Syracuse in that game. Syracuse, I think, stylistically always matches up well with Virginia. I mean, Virginia's won, against Syracuse. They won both games this year. And, of course, we remember the Elite Eight from a couple of years ago. Can't forget that. But they play that 2-3 zone, and so even though they've played the day before, and everybody who has had to play, you never play back-to-back days in the regular season. Then all of a sudden you play back-to-back days in a conference tournament. But they're not stretching their legs out quite as much as a lot of teams do if you play man-to-man and that kind of thing. So they match up well. They're not quite as tired. I mean, you want to play a man team. If you have to play somebody, obviously you do have to play someone on Thursday. You want to play somebody who plays man-to-man. You'd love them to have played 4 or 5 overtimes the day before, if possible. I would not want to play Virginia Tech. I was impressed with Virginia Tech and what Buzz Williams did to counter Virginia. Now, I wrote a column about how there was concern. And Scott and I driving back from the game that night. Hey, do you think that they've got a blueprint out there that other teams can follow? And I said, if the blueprint is you hold Virginia to 34% shooting, make them shoot 38 threes. And you have to hope that Devin Hall misses the front end of a 1-and-1 to win the game by 1 point. That's a hell of a blueprint because that's a lot going right to win by 1 point. But that said, they did pack the lane with their matchup zone. They dared Virginia to get inside. Virginia, tired legs, didn't get inside, and so that would be. And plus, if they're playing that matchup zone again, it doesn't affect your legs as much. They tried that last night. Then they got away from it. Buzz realized it wasn't working against Duke, that matchup zone, so he got away from it with some man. He would do it again because it worked. And it's kind of like in baseball. If you get guys out with sliders, you keep throwing him sliders until he hits it. So I wouldn't want to see Tech or Syracuse. That said, I don't know that you really say you want to play anybody. Maybe Louisville would be the team I would choose, and they're probably more of a Friday game. They're probably more of a 4 or 5 type game. So. But yeah, and plus anybody you play on Thursday in the 8-9 game, I think ACC gets 10 teams in. So I think your 8-9 winner is going to be, especially the winner of that 8-9 game, is going to have won that game the day before. They probably are in the tournament, but one more win over a marquee team really guarantees them a tournament bid. So you're going to get the best shot of whoever you play in that first game on Thursday.
So 4 games leading into the ACC tournament, we noticed a little shift of pounding the ball into the paint against Miami. Is there anything specifically that Bennett and his staff are going to be looking to do or accomplish? Because it's quite feasible that Duke and Clemson are going head-to-head on Sunday. Somebody takes that loss. I mean, we go in there and win at home against Georgia Tech. We may have cinched the ACC regular season title already, which is bizarre to think about. Is there any tinkering that Tony needs to do or you expect to see him do over the next 4 games in preparation for the ACC tournament?
What's interesting is I'm seeing we have these 8 days off, so the other UVA writers and analysts that we all follow each other on Twitter, we're seeing the discussion points being brought up by some of these people because we're all bored, has to do with right now DeAndre Hunter is the best offensive player on that team. There's no question about that. We saw that against Miami, but the last 2 months he's been the best offensive player on his team. And so, but he's not starting. And it's hard to imagine that Tony's going to tinker with a starting lineup because you're 24-2. Why do you would? And they've started that same starting lineup 26 times. So you're not going to tinker your starting lineup, but he did get 30 minutes the other night. So he got starter minutes. Whether he started or not, he got starter minutes. He played 10 minutes in the backcourt, which is interesting. In fact, when he first came in the game, he replaced one of the guards. Virginia plays the 3-guard system, so he replaced one of the guards and was playing the 3 position, and then played the other 20 minutes at 4. So figuring a way to run, to get Hunter 30 minutes a night as a bench guy is a key thing here, I think. And also, gosh, when he's in the game, why do you run zone against Virginia? Because if you do that, we can all see the play in our head, because if you've seen the GIF online or the quick YouTube video online of that play where I think Jerome passes the ball to Hunter at the foul line, who then passes it in the corner to, I think it was Hall. Hall passes the ball to Wilkins right above the basket at the in the post, who then passes to Hunter, who dunks over somebody. That perfect zone busting play. If Hunter's there, he either does that, he can drive to the basket, he can hit that little 12 to 15-foot jump shot. He made a 3. I think he made another 3 and got fouled again, just like he's done a couple times this year. And that made Guy more effective. Guy had been – I'd written a column about the tired legs Virginia had, and Guy in the 5 games before the Miami game had been shooting like 33% from the field over that 5-game stretch. 5 of 9. He only shot 5 threes, didn't jack up all the threes that he'd been doing lately. And so, better quality shots out of Guy as a result of the attention that Hunter is able to draw. So, I think trying to figure out a way to just get involved DeAndre even more. I think that's – and also then, you talk about adjustments. I think I really think – because I wrote this after the Tech game – when Guy played 45 minutes, Jerome played 43, Hall still coming off the lingering effects of the flu, played 39, Wilkins played 39. I thought he was playing his starters so much because I really felt like he was just trying to get through the Miami game. You got the 8 days off. It was a tough stretch, that 9-game stretch, those 6 games on the road, all those tough games. I think he was just trying to ride the horses, keep winning. Maybe the pressure of the rise to number 1. I don't think anybody would admit that, but I think there was probably a factor of, hey, we do really want to achieve this, and it just kind of ran its course. They ran out of steam Saturday night. So I think I'd like to see more minutes for Nigel Johnson. Marco Anthony perhaps gets some minutes as well. If Diakite can stay out of foul trouble, get him some minutes too. So that the starters are getting – I'd love if the last 4 games going into the ACC tournament, if we could get our starters down to about 30 minutes a game, that includes Hunter, then get your bench guys some more minutes, so you enter the games in March that really mean something with still some legs left. I think that's got to be a focal point for Tony going into the last few games.
Huff sighting? Probably not.
Probably not. Except in garbage time, and there may be a couple garbage time opportunities. You don't want to presume anything, but Georgia Tech at home, Pitt on the road, Pitt anywhere in the country if you play wherever you play them, there may be opportunity for some extended minutes for the deep bench there. Honestly, I'd love to see him get some minutes in these next 2 games. Show that he's worthy of some more minutes in meaningful games. I mean, we saw Marco Anthony come out of nowhere and have that solid game against Louisville. He hasn't really played much since, but 18 minutes in the game against Louisville when Johnson went down with the suspension. Love to see Huff get some minutes in these next 2 games come up and just put that seed in the back of Tony's head. Hey, maybe Huff gets 5-10 minutes a game now. That would be awesome. Yeah.
It took till Jason Rogers' senior year, the last 2 games, to actually get on the floor and you go, wow, this kid may actually have some talent.
That was Pete Gillen not reading talent. Yeah, he was a fourth year by that point. Yeah, had the great game against Maryland. I think that final regular season game, great game in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, you played him for senior night, and you're like, oh, wow.
Maybe we'll leave that kid in after the first TV timeout.
The 7-footer actually can play. Oh, Pete Gillen. I love seeing Pete on the Fox Sports Network and handling the microphone. Oh, Pete.
Yeah, and he still as far as I know, he still lives in Charlottesville, and he still hangs around, and I'm sure just loves the fact that program he couldn't turn around is number one in the country 2 coaches later, right?
Oh, it's insane. It's fun to watch. It's great. Now, we made a hard cut several weeks ago when we had a quiet time period, and we went back and talked about the Chris Graham of the 80s and the joy of the covering Virginia basketball and the book that you've written, The Last Ball at U-Haul, and some of your experience on radio. I'm curious now, you've got an ebook you're working on about your wrestling promotion career. And I don't know how many of the listeners out there, as Tony Kornheiser talks about hockey discussions, are all going to go wrestling. However, the wrestling part of your promotional career, I got pulled into a little bit, and with great joy and connectivity with my boys. But many people out there on the Street Knowledge podcast may not recognize you've put on a pay-per-view that you can still see on Netflix, and the larger Chris. The
supersize me. Yeah,
the supersize Graham on pay-per-view. You've run and promoted many a wrestling event. You've brought a lot of money into Waynesboro and the surrounding area. You've brought Shawn Michaels here. You've brought Kevin Nash here. You've brought Gold Dust here. Your wife has pulled a sweaty wrestling outfit off of Gold Dust. I mean, there's just so many great stories.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how did you get into promoting wrestling events?
Yeah, I got, there was a company called Awesome Wrestling Entertainment that was putting on shows locally, and they actually just needed a website built. And so we did the website, and as I was working with that company, it was based in California primarily, but they were putting shows on here because they had a local promoter. Just build the website. That's all. We build websites for a lot of clients. That's one thing we do. And I think they found out pretty quickly that I was actually a knowledgeable fan of the wrestling industry, and so behind the scenes, all of a sudden, instead of just and so we started working in marketing, helping market the shows. Then sitting in the back room, being able to sit in the booking meetings, as they're called. It was soon learned by these folks that, hey, maybe Chris has some good ideas how these matches should be scripted. I mean, because obviously I'm not giving anything away when I say that it is theater, and so it's obviously scripted, but so I got to have my hand in that part of the game, and then it just kind of evolved from there. That company, it was 2011 when that company hired us to do the website, and that turned into more. That year they put on a pay-per-view. So I think it was in January when they reached out to us to build the website. By that October, they were putting on a in-demand pay-per-view. So I'm not talking about an internet pay-per-view. For wrestling fans who are listening, there are things called internet pay-per-views where essentially all you do is you record the show and then later make it available. It's almost like a DVD that just happens to play it actually plays on the internet, and they call it a pay-per-view. You have to pay to watch it, but this was a live show. This was a live TV show emanating out of Fishersville, Virginia, just up the road from us here, small town at the Augusta Expo Land. And, so I went within 9 months, and a life of being a wrestling fan, within 9 months, I'm telling Kevin Nash how to finish a match, and,
Of which he didn't listen.
No, Kevin Nash, being Kevin Nash, he had a better ending in his mind, but yeah, we were working with Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer. We also had a nice ending of that match that didn't work out because of the referee. Thought he saw a signal from the back saying wrap the match up, and he didn't see that sign, but he quickly counted to 3 on a move that was early in the match. Actually, but the match was supposed to go about 25 minutes. About 5 minutes of the match, he thought that for some reason he thought the backstory to that is, and this is actually all in the book, but we had that company hired a former WWE TV producer to produce and direct that live show that night, and we had been insistent that our referees needed earpieces. The WWE guys you see on TV actually have a little earpiece in the back. They get direction from the folks in the back as to when to take the match home, as we call it, go home with the finish. And the referee then very subtly reminds the live performers, hey, you're getting the go home signal. The go home signal is you got 3 minutes to finish, basically. So for some reason he thought so instead of the earpiece methodology, the producer said, no, we don't need earpieces. Let's just do a hand signal system. That's what Vince used back in the day. Well, Vince wasn't using it even then in 2011, but so we didn't use earpieces. We used a hand signal system. Well, he thought he saw a hand signal from the back that he didn't see, and he finished the match about 7 minutes instead of 25 minutes. That was, unfortunately for us, I think it was the first match of the show. And so we're all of a sudden, our first match of a live show, we're 20 minutes off. And that was the first of many blunders that night.
Well, I recall sitting there as a fan. One of the subsequent matches after that, somebody got their knee worked on for like 5-10 minutes. Attack the knee. And I can't remember.
Finley against Alex Silva. Yeah.
Yes.
And Finley even, we worked the injury angle out where we made it seem like maybe we have to stop the match because his knee's so hurt. And that bought more time. I mean, even Funk and Dreamer, Funk, professional that he is, I don't know if you remember this or not, but after the quick count, Terry Funk went ballistic, started throwing chairs, pile drive the referee. It took him 5 minutes to leave the ring because Terry realized immediately, hey, that guy screwed up. So I've got to eat time up here. So he tried to eat some of that time up by throwing the chairs. He got a table and threw it. He went and grabbed some bell at ringside, pile drive the ref, try to beat up the timekeeper.
Thanks, Terry.
And he's trying to do all this stuff to take to try to eat some of that time up. So, and that didn't come from a signal from the back. That's just Terry Funk being Terry Funk, who's at late 60s at the time, still working like a 30-year-old. But we had to run the injury angle with Fit Finley. Then we had saved a match from the pre-show, and we saved it just in case. Those two guys may not have even worked that night. But we saved a match. It was a short sleeve Samson Abu Shango match.
Which was classic.
But it was also right before the main event, and we were trying all night long not to use that match. No offense to short sleeve Rob Shango, David Tita. We were trying not to use that match because it really wasn't a pay-per-view quality match. But
it had a comedy angle to it, which was a nice flavor, and it never occurred to me that wasn't part of it.
That was not intended to be on the show, no, and... we couldn't stretch it out long enough to not use them. But so they did they did the job they needed to do. But we would not have placed that match right before the main event. And then, of course, the main event, we had a great match book. I mean, we had a great ending book. It was Ricky Morton. Actually, the match was supposed to be, it was billed as the Rock and Roll Express against Kevin Nash and DDP. But all along, it was just going to be Kevin Nash versus Ricky Morton one-on-one. And that was, at least internally, that's the way that was always booked. So, we had it set up that we were going to Kevin Nash being 7 feet tall, Ricky Morton being about 5'8". There's logically no way that anyone would expect Ricky Morton to beat Kevin Nash in a singles match. There's no logic to that at all. But wrestling doesn't have logic. Usually in those kind of situations, something weird happens. If you remember, the famous match that really launched Raw was when the 1-2-3 Kid, Sean Waltman, who we worked with later, beating Razor Ramon in a match. And 1-2-3 Kid weighing 150 pounds dripping wet, beating big old Razor Ramon. That's what really launched Raw. All of a sudden you realize, hey, we have to watch Raw because something that we don't expect might happen. And so what we were going to do was we were going to basically have a screw job finish, a sort of a Montreal screw job, the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels famous ending. We were going to screw Kevin out of the win, and then he was going to tear the place up. And we had that ending booked months in advance. But then in the interim, Kevin's good friend Paul Levesque, also known as Triple H, decided that he wanted to use Kevin for WWE. He actually had him interfere in the main event that year at SummerSlam and attack CM Punk, then the WWE champion. And so I remember I was watching the show that night, and another promoter that we were working with was watching the show that night, and neither of us knew that Kevin was going to be at the WWE SummerSlam main event. And we both saw it independently. We texted each other, did you know he was going to be there? No, I didn't know. Did you know? I didn't know. Oh, crap, what does this mean for us? It's not going to be good. So literally Saturday night was our pay-per-view. Kevin was going to debut on Raw as a full-time guy again on Monday night. So he didn't want to do the ending we had planned. And you can't tell a 7-foot guy that you still have to do the ending that we have planned. And he wrote his own ending, and it wasn't good. And we got slammed for it because it made us look like we didn't know what we were doing. But that happens sometimes.
I recall a lot of blood and a good speech. I loved his. I thought he did a classic mic drop out of the ring.
Yeah, he still lost by count out.
Right.
But
Ricky bled like I've never. My son and I were eye level with the ring, good seats, not floor, but we had a perfect level. And he looked at me and said, "Is that real blood?" I was like, "That can't be real blood." Oh my God, I've never seen a man bleed like that. His blonde locks were strawberry red. And later on, you told me a little bit about that story. Talk about the Ricky Morton bleeding story.
Yeah, so bleeding actually happens sometimes naturally because it is a contact sport, contact theater. Earlier that night, Alex Silva actually broke his nose, and that was not intended. The Silva Finley match we talked about. Late in that match, Finley did a knee lift move and hit it stiffer than he planned to, and it broke Silva's nose. Now Silva won the match, but blood everywhere, and that's so incidental blood doesn't get you in trouble, and I say get you in trouble for this reason because wrestling is still, even though it's combat theater, you're still subject to the regulations of an athletic commission. In Virginia, there is a Virginia Athletic Commission. You have to get licensure from the Department of what is it? DPOR, Department of Professional Occupation Regulation, and among the rules buried in all those regulations are no blading. Wrestling is famous. I mean, usually blood, when you see blood in a match, and I'm not giving away a secret here again. I'm just kind of confirming what you might already know. Yeah, blood in a match usually is predetermined. Somebody's got something hidden, like in their the tape they have on their wrist. They got a little razor blade, and so you don't. If you bleed intentionally in a match, that's a finable offense, and it's actually a $5,000 fine. First offense. Second offense is you lose your license, and so Ricky bled so much that night. Now, see, so the Alex Silva thing wouldn't get you in trouble because it would be obvious from a replay. Hey, it was an accident. It happened. There was certainly no intent to break the guy's nose. So you never worry about those things from a licensure standpoint. But Ricky clearly, I mean, the TV cameras are also trained to look away. The producer. But see, the thing was, we hadn't planned any blood. We didn't know what Kevin and Ricky had worked out. They worked out on their own that there was going to be blood in this match. So the TV camera people, the producer, the WWE producer, he didn't cut away when Ricky played himself. And so that was unfortunate, and bled like a stuck pig.
Yes,
and,
not only did he bleed himself, the Nash pulls the turnbuckle off and drops Morton on it,
did a snake
and
eyes
it
move.
opens up the head wound.
Yeah.
It was magnificent.
Yeah, so clearly that was not good, and so afterwards, the company did have a hearing with the DPOR, and we were able to avoid the hefty fine, but actually, the story was that Kevin actually had said, "Hey, if you guys get the fine, I'll pay it. I don't really care. I just wanted blood in the match." So. But you could have told us ahead of time, dude.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Because we were worried for weeks, like we might lose our license over this,
Kevin was interesting because he came to the Y, and you guys had I think a car dealership or a rental company or something that originally booked him. Something didn't happen, and you guys had him, and you brought him to the Y. And I think Mathers Construction or somebody wrote a check and sent him to the Y. So he shows up to do a signing, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But when I noticed, he couldn't. It was just fascinating watching him enter into our door because he is a mammoth of a man, and B, he couldn't get up our stairs.
Right.
Those knees were hideous.
Good, yeah.
I mean, my knees hurt right now, and I didn't do anything yet today. And I'm just a slob. Kevin Nash put in decades of pain on that thing, and watching him just walk up a flight of steps was kind of sad.
And I believe he had because he played basketball. He played at the University of Tennessee. Then he played overseas for a few years. I think Germany, maybe a couple European leagues. And so he had, if I remember his history, like I think I do, he'd had a torn ACL as a basketball player. So he came into wrestling with an injury, and then the years of wear and tear in wrestling. And that weekend he worked a tag match, he and Sean Waltman against the Rock and Roll Express. So we brought that back and actually had a tag match. And if you remember, I'm really telling a good story. That was this is in 2013. 2 weeks before that match, Sean Waltman tore his anus. Wrestling fans, when I say those words out loud, you will remember that painful sentence you read, and you just heard me say it again. He tore his anus. His big move was the Bronco Buster. One of his big moves was the Bronco Buster, which was involved the guy would be laying down against the turnbuckles, and then he would run across the ring and hit the guy, basically just straddling the guy around his head. And there's two ways to do that move. Obviously, when you're hitting the move, you let up a little bit because you don't want to hit the guy's actual head. You don't want to hurt the guy. And then when you think you're going to when you know ahead of time that the guy's going to move out of the way, you pull up even more. Well, something happened, miscommunication between the two guys, and he hit the hell out of that move, and tore his anus. Didn't realize it, so he actually finished that match, and then didn't know until he got back to the locker room that his pants were full of blood. He almost bled out that night, almost died that night. And so 2 weeks later, he's wrestling for us, and we're like, dude, we don't expect you to work. We'll just figure something else out. I mean, we don't care. Kevin could work a singles match. You can stand on the apron and not work. We don't, but dude, you do not need. No, man, I'm good. And I think what really happened, Kevin's knees.
Right.
He's like, well, I ain't working with this crap, So if somebody's got to work, dude, you got to take the pumps. So
X-Pac's going to have to.
X-Pac with his torn anus had to do that. So
well, and he played it great. I was the ring announcer that night. And he was grasping his ass, limping through it.
Oh,
it was a known entity by
terrible.
all the fans. It became an odd comedy routine.
Yeah.
Built in just seeing these guys perform. And that was the night, the comeback, so to speak, that never was, but still national news in the wrestling world of Jake the Snake Roberts getting back in the ring.
Yeah. Do you know the Jake the Snake Roberts story from? I don't know if I've ever told this story out loud. It'll be in the book. So Jake, you mentioned Jake's comeback, 2013. He'd been working with Diamond Dallas Page. He had been as close to death as you can be without dying, like Scott Hall. And of course, DDP with DDP Yoga, he's actually saved. I don't want to over dramatize it and say saved lives, but I think he has. Scott Hall's case and Jake Roberts' case, two guys with serious substance abuse issues. He took them in from months, I think a couple years at a time for those two guys. Cleaned them out, got them off the drugs, put them through rehab, and then put them through the DDP yoga. They lost weight, they got in better shape, etc. So, DDP had a relationship with one of the guys on our crew, and hey, can I send Jake up there and have him do an autograph signing? We're like, yeah, because it was a big show. We had Mick Foley, we had the Rock and Roll Express, Kevin and Sean, and big card. So can I send him up there? That might be a chance for him to make some money. It'd be a chance for him to kind of interact. So it was one of his first appearances since his return from almost the dead, and but DDP didn't come on the trip with him. Put him on a plane, sent him up there. And the deal we had with him was, we didn't as a promotion pay him any money, but whatever money he made that night on autograph sales was his. It was his cash, and his line. It was, it was way out there. He made $1,200 that night.
Nice.
So, but he didn't, and he came out, made a little comment in front of the live crowd, and then we put him in a car, put him back on a plane. So months later, I'm watching HBO Real Sports. I hadn't even heard this story until the Real Sports. It was about DDP and how he had been working with Scott Hall and Jake Roberts, a couple other wrestlers, and they had kind of embedded in DDP's compound and that kind of thing. So there gets to be a scene where he confronts Jake because he went to pick up Jake at the airport. And Jake apparently had a relapse. He had just gone to a show. He had cash. He got left at the airport, and the plane, something with the plane was late boarding or something like that. And he went to the airport bar and got hammered. And was our show.
Wow.
The cash from our show. So.
And I think of the speech he made to that crowd, because I introduced him, and that was one of the oddly more thrilling experiences, surreal of my life, because the crowd erupted. And I told him earlier, I talked to him, and as I did with all of your talent, how do you want to be introduced? And he wouldn't really tell me. I had no idea what he was going to do, when he wanted the mic, what was up. But he walked in with the mic. I said, Jake the Snake Roberts, and boom, the crowd erupts. And he gave a speech about, overcoming obstacles and barriers and being drug-free. And it was brilliant. And that the eruption of the crowd. And what you're telling me is 12 hours later he was hammered?
Yeah. It was a relapse that he had to deal a few more months with afterwards.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was good to see him. I don't know. That was just a great, and that's what's a cool thing about. I really look forward to the book. The stories that you did in the last ball at U-Haul and some of the interviews you were able to capture and grab that I was not aware of. I'm looking forward to, getting my hands on the ebook, just knowing some of the background and experiencing some of the things I got to experience with you, but in some of the things I wasn't aware of. And if folks are interested, I'm guessing Night of the Awesome Legends is still on Netflix.
I think it is. I do think it is. And actually, I'll tell you, the book is actually, I was inspired to write this book this is February, so I think it was like maybe last April. I was doing some research because we were helping put on a show it was last May, so it might have even been last March. And I was doing some research just about our own history. So I actually did some Google searches of Awesome Wrestling Entertainment and that kind of thing just to kind of look it up. And the one thing I never did after that show was such an interesting show that I don't know why, but I didn't go back and read reviews. I mean, I didn't know that people reviewed shows like that. I wasn't aware of that. So when I typed this thing in, and I was actually looking up, trying to think who there was a wrestler on our card, maybe it was Jamin Olavencia. I was trying to look up Jamin Olavencia and get sort of his history. And so I looked up Jamin Olavencia, and then it led to a link that said Jamin Olavencia appeared on the infamous Night of the Legends show. And I'm like, infamous? So I started doing a little bit more research on that, and I found all these horrible reviews of the show. And, the night of the show, we knew that a couple things had gotten botched. Certainly any live show has things happen. I mean, I don't know that I watch a WWE show. Jeff and I get together once a month and watch the live shows on the WWE Network. I don't know that I ever watch a show and don't see, as a person who's helped put on shows before, I don't know that I ever don't see some things that are just totally botched. But these reviews were harsh, and I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss this? So
probably best you did.
It's probably best that I did, but so reading them all, it made me think, I got to tell the story of this, because I got to give people, because the people who write the reviews, of course, they're not people who've ever worked behind the scenes of a wrestler. They're fans, and fans deserve the right to say they like a show or don't like a show. But I wanted to let them know that how difficult it is to put a big show like that on. So it made me. I just started writing some of those thoughts down. It turns into a book, and so the working title of the book. I think this is going to be the title of the book. The worst wrestling pay-per-view ever made, because that was the consensus of the people. But I tell the story then, and I'm telling you why it wasn't the worst pay-per-view ever made, and I'm telling you how hard it is to put a show like that on, and all these stories. So, but yeah, that's where the book came from.
Awesome.
I had no idea that I was part of this infamous pay-per-view. I wrote the thing, man.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. Well, we've got another 6 days before Virginia plays again, and whenever you listen to this podcast drop, it'll drop on Thursday evening. UVA fans, you got plenty of time. So if you want to have some fun, pull up the worst pay-per-view ever made. Awesome Night of
I've
Legends
done a great job selling it, haven't I? Yeah.
And get ready for Chris's book, and just get engaged. Go out and play with your kids. Kiss your wife. Jump on a trampoline, have a blast, get ready for Virginia, Georgia Tech on Wednesday night, and have a great remainder of your week.